Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Indian Foreign Policy Project, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this special virtual panel titled India China at 75 Lessons, Leverage, and the Road Ahead. This panel is hosted by FPP Speaker Series, which brings together India and the world's leading diplomats, researchers, politicians, and academics to discuss India's foreign affairs with young Indians. As India and China mark 75 years of diplomatic relations, we find ourselves reflecting not only on the arc of history, but also on the growing strategic competition that defines their present and will also shape their future. In an era of various shifting alliances contesting borders and geographies, and a very rapidly evolving Indo-Pacific, understanding the military dimensions of this relationship is more urgent, of course, than ever. This panel brings together four of India's foremost defense minds, each with extensive backgrounds and a critical experience in the armed forces and deep expertise in how India's strategic posture is evolving in response to China. Today's discussion will center around China's new containment strategy for India, India's position in the Russia-Indo-China troika, developments in the Indo-Pacific and their significance for India, and of course, the overall future of India's relationship with China. For our audience members, there will be an audience Q&A session at the end. So if you have questions during the middle, jot them down and use the raise hand feature towards the end when we open the floor for questions. This session is being recorded and will be published across IFPP's platforms for greater public access. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our panel for the day. So our first panelist for today is Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, commissioned into the 11 Gorkha Rifles in 1979. Lieutenant General Chauhan brings formidable experience in managing India's contested land borders. He has commanded the 70 Mountain Brigade along the LAC in eastern Ladakh, the 8 Mountain Division in western Ladakh, and India's oldest strike corps. Post retirement, he chaired the Ceasefire Monitoring Group and currently holds both the Field Marshal Cariapa Chair at USI and the COAS Chair at CLAWS, leading key research in multi-domain warfare. A scholar soldier with 5 presidential awards to his name, Lieutenant General Chauhan is one of India's most respected voices on our strategic neighborhood. We also have with us Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan, who is a stalwart of the Indian Navy. He has commanded 4 ships, including the aircraft carrier INS Virat, during his distinguished career. He now leads the National Maritime Foundation, which is India's foremost maritime think tank, and is an acclaimed analyst in Indo-Pacific security, China's maritime expansion, and Indian naval strategy. With over 100 published writings, he brings an unmatched perspective to the maritime contours of India-China relations. We also have with us AVM Anil Golani, was commissioned into the fighter stream in 1982. EVM Golani superannuated in 2019 after a long and impactful career in the Indian Air Force. He currently serves as Director General of the Center for Air Power Studies, where he writes and speaks extensively on national security and the role of air power. He's also co-editor of key works on aerospace strategy, offering critical insights into the air dimension of strategic competition with China. Thank you for all panelists for joining us today. A small request is to try keeping all answers short and crisp, since we have a lot to discuss, and we would just like to get everyone's perspectives. I'm also quite pleased to introduce our moderator for today's session, Lieutenant Colonel J.S. Sodhi. He is the founder editor of Global Strategic and Defense News and a decorated veteran with deep insights into defense writing, strategic communications, and Chinese military strategy. He's a recipient of the General Officer Commander-in-Chief Commendation Card in 2007 and the Chief of Army Staff Commendation Card in 2013. At present, he serves on the advisory board of China Policy and Research Foundation and GeoJuris today. His recent book, China's War Clouds, The Great Chinese Checkmate, offers timely context for today's discussion. Thank you for being with us on such short notice, sir. Um, well, now as India's defined its role in an uncertain world, dialogues like this today are very critical to young Indians who will be informed and now will be thinking about what to do. Without further ado, over to you, Lieutenant Colonel.
Thank you, Ajitesh. Jai Hind. It is my honor and privilege to be moderator for such an eminent and esteemed panel. All the 3 panelists are icons, are legends. I follow each of the 3 very vividly, be it by the way of their writings, by the way of their appearances on TV channels. To admit very clearly, I'm a big fan of all the 3 panelists, and my heartfelt gratitude to the Indian Foreign Policy Project for having chosen me as a moderator. I think it is my real honor to be among the 3 legends. Well, coming to the first question, which is to General Shokin to answer. Sir, after India and China established the diplomatic relation on 1st April 1950, we have seen lot has gone rather down the valley. And ironically, India and China had good relations historically, but after the Chinese Civil War in 1949, things slowly started going downslide. Whereas on the other side, we have always had problems with Pakistan ever since the creation in 47. So, say, in view of this backdrop and given the immense experience you have while serving the Northeast, how deep is the Chinese involvement in the internal unrest in India, be it the various militant groups in the Northeast or the ISI funded terrorism in JNK? How deep is the Chinese involvement in the Indian internal unrest?
Good evening, Jaswinder. It's a pleasure to be with old senior colleagues like Vice Admiral Chauhan, who's the other smart Chauhan, as I always tell him. But more than that, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. And it's a very interesting topic because talking about China and talking about the Northeast is something that's really something that we really need to know. So let me try and frame my answer by talking about India's Northeast, uh, India's northeastern neighbors, and then Chinese engagement with these neighbors, and then, of course, with the insurgent groups. So let's go a little back into history. Uh, Immediately post our independence, or even the Chinese Revolution, when the Chinese took over Tibet, the Chinese became, for the first time in our recorded history, a neighbor of India. All this while, it was Tibet that was India's neighbor and not the Chinese. So that's the first issue that we need to know. The second issue is in a couple of years, I think it's 1959, that the Dalai Lama fled Tibet and was accompanied into India at the border by the Assam Rifles and brought there and given permanent residence and permanent refugee status in India. And India also allowed him uh, the privilege of having a government in exile. So that's the first issue where, despite all the other good, when we became independent, we talked of Panchsheel, we signed the Panchsheel Treaty with China. Despite all those issues, with the Dalai Lama coming into India in 1959, a lot of dynamics between us and China changed. And how did these change? China immediately became very, very suspicious of India. Tibet has always been China's weak point, as they say. And based on this particular weak point, we've always had to defend ourselves against China. So we had the 1962 war with China, which ended disastrously for India. And there was an ongoing Naga insurgency, which had actually started in 1958. The Nagas had refused to accept the Republic of India being as a part of India, and it decided that independence was the best way by which they could carry out this their goal. And the first lot of Naga insurgents went to China for training by 1965. 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, carried on till the 70s. So immediately after we lost the 1962 war, China started interfering with India's internal affairs and started giving support to the Naga groups. And these Naga groups under, at that time, Isaac and Muiba, and of course Kaplan, were all trained in China. And when they came back with arms, weapons, training, and of course a whole lot of logistic support that China gave them. And as a result, they were able to, hold the Indian army from 1962 to almost 1979. 1967, we had a problem with China in terms of the Sikkim incident, where for the first time India retaliated. But when we retaliated, we also destroyed a lot of Chinese, we killed a lot of Chinese soldiers and held on to the Chola Pass, which was what the Chinese were planning to takeover, the watershed between India and China. And that is how our relations started going south. So the first issue is when you take our neighbors into consequence. The first neighbor that you take into consequence is Myanmar. China is extremely and deeply involved in Myanmar. They are involved with all the 16 insurgencies in Myanmar. They are giving arms to both the insurgents as well as the Myanmar army, which is known as the Tatmadaw. So no matter who wins in this situation, China will win because China is giving arms and weapons to everybody. There's an arms bazaar in the Yunnan province, on the border of the Yunnan province and Burma. It's called the town of Ruli. It's actually a grey market bazaar where all our insurgent groups, whether it's the Indian NSCNIM or is it the Indian People's Liberation Army of Manipur, or it was the Mizo Mizo insurgent group who are now, in fact, now at peace with us. But all these insurgent groups continue to draw their weapons, ammunition through this arms bazaar. Now, being involved in Burma is one thing. Being involved in the disturbances in India is the second thing. China has also permeated into Nepal. Post 1962, Nepal started distancing itself with India, balancing this relationship. And today, with the Maoist government, they continue to have an engagement which is more pro-China than India. We have seen the recent case of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is trying to play China against India. We have seen the case of Maldives, where China is once again playing the game. The Maldives politicians are playing the game with us. We've seen the situation in Tibet, where the Hanbantota, the port, and the Colombo port are both with China. So all over, and of course, we've seen China supporting Pakistan in a very big way. And for the first time, Jacinda, we saw from day one, China was fully integrated into the air defense and the air information systems with Pakistan. So whatever happens with us in the next war, we have to be absolutely clear that China is integrated with Pakistan from day one. It isn't as if, there's a separation like what we did in 1971 when we waited for the passes to close and to ensure that China could not help Pakistan. But today, they're absolutely and fully involved. So yes, China is fully involved. China continues to be very suspicious of India's intentions. We continue to have the Dalai Lama with us. We continue to have the Tibetan government in exile with us. And I don't think this relationship will ever be repaired again. China will continue to play Pakistan against us. She will continue to try and push us back into the subcontinent, get us involved in small wars so that China can grow. And that seems to be China's intent. As China wants to achieve superpower status, she does not want another rival in the Asian continent. So that's in short an issue about China. Over to you, Jacinda.
So it was really very informative, and I totally agree with you. There's a famous Chinese saying which says, "On a mountain, only one lion can stay," and China believes it is that lion, and India has no space. So my next question is to Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan, sir. Sir, in 1996, Yevgeny Primakov, who was then the foreign minister of Russia, he proposed the Primakov doctrine, in which he said that since NATO is expanding, despite given assurances it will not expand eastwards, it is time that a trilateral between Russia, China, and India should be formed, where the three nations have good friendship. Now, sir, we have seen India is little uncomfortable in SEO and BRICS, which is primarily China dominated. Sir, in your views, do you feel that this trilateral of Russia, India, China is possible in future, given that just some weeks back, the current Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has hinted at this Primakov doctrine once again?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you very much for including me in this fascinating panel discussion. Thank you, Jacinda, for moderating it with your usual aplomb. Now let me get on to the question that you've asked. See, the thing is that there is a great, you said that there's a great amount of unease in India, or there's some amount of unease in India in dealing with the SCO and BRICS. Actually, the unease, in my opinion, is very largely in Europe as well as in USA, and this is entirely misplaced. The reason is that Russia, what is the worst nightmare generally? It is that there will be an axis, military axis between Russia, China, and North Korea, and then there's a fourth entrant, which is possibly in the US mind, Iran, but in my mind, Turkey. And this will be an alliance that we would have a major nightmare with, and that nightmare would be then shared with the nightmare prevailing with much of the West, including the US. So Russia is not talking to Europe. Russia is talking at Europe. Europe is not talking to Russia. Europe is talking at Russia. And the same is true of the United States and Russia. So who's the only one that is talking or capable of talking to Russia? That is India. And the reason is because neither Europe nor America are in the same room as is Russia. So the only people who can talk to Russia and seek to prevent this huge embrace from becoming completely suffocating for us in the SCO and in BRICS is actually India. So we can clearly talk to Russia. That brings you to a new question about why Russia wants to talk to us. Now, Russia, when we talk to Russia, we ask them, are you really sure that you want to abandon us and fall in love with China? Are you sure? And so this is our message to Russia. But we want Russia to talk to us as well, isn't it? So the only reason why Russia would talk to us is if India carries sufficient heft right across the dime paradigm, which is, diplomatic, informational, military, economic heft. So as our heft increases, Russia is more and more inclined to talk to us. That's insofar as SCO and BRICS and India and Russia are concerned. There, in my opinion, we do not have and we do not share the ambiguities that Europe has vis-a-vis China. We don't have this thing about whether they are sometimes a partner, sometimes a rival, sometimes a systemic. For us, once China has addressed us physically, and you violate me in one area physically, you violate me everywhere, because India does not have, there are not two geopolitical entities called India, one on the Trans-Himalayan border and one elsewhere. We have a border. It is not the same as having a Trans-Himalayan border. One is a set, one is a subset. So within this, what I am trying to emphasize is the need for India to drive a wedge and separate the Russia-China embrace. Now we come to RIC, which is the Primakov doctrine, to which you have specifically made reference. So as you can see, one militates against the other. So people often ask, why is it that India and China can't just get along? I mean, what is the problem? And why can't we just become, even if we are economic competitors, why can't we just compete? Why is it necessary for us to be adversarial in our outlook? One of the things, of course, is everything that Shokin said. And Shokin, I take note of the fact that you said that I'm the other intelligent Chauhan. And I concede that point with alacrity and grace. So that's looking back on a more serious note. This question needs to be addressed as to why can't we just get on? And one element, as I said, a major element is what General Chauhan has just mentioned, and the other is that India and China are like two children who are sipping away at a Pepsi bottle or a Pepsi can with two straws. So I've got one straw, China's got one straw. The can represents the economics of the Chinese country and its need for external trade, and India, its economy, and its equal need for external trade. So we cannot move from a $4 trillion to a $30 trillion economy by having the Indian economy running on internal supply and internal demand. So now we're two kids, and we're saying, ready, 1, 2, 3, go, and we start. And in 5 seconds flat, one of us is going to tell the other guy, you're sucking harder than me, never mind the connotations of the word sucking. So why is that so? It's because it's a can. It's because it's opaque. It's not a bottle. It's not a glass. It's opaque. China brings opacity to its economic competition, thereby bringing opacity to its geopolitical moves. And India is not able, therefore, to bring China on the same plane as we do USA or Europe or the individual countries of Europe, etc., in this particular area. Therefore, the Primakov doctrine is something that the Russians would like, the Chinese would love, but India, I think that India should be not only extremely cautious, but there is no way that we can run this. Because, as I mentioned, there is no way that we can actually bandwagon with or climb onto the same ticket as China. And therefore, I think, in my opinion, the RIC is dead in the water. It'll make a lot of noise, but I cannot see how it will get progress and at the same time serve India's national interests. I think I'll stop there.
So very interesting points you made, and really love the example you gave of the Pepsi can. Thank you so much, sir. So my next question is to Air Vice Marshal Golani, sir. Sir, on 3rd February 2023, the then director of CIA, William Burns, said that in 2027, China will go to war with for Taiwan. And just few months back, rather few days back, during the Shangri-La dialogue on 31st May, Pete Hegseth, the US Defense Secretary, said the way China is preparing, it is planning for an imminent invasion of Taiwan. So, given this background, how do you assess India's role in case China does attack Taiwan in 2027, as the American leadership is predicting? Would we as a nation take part to assess Taiwan, to assess US, or we would not do anything when China attacks Taiwan? So I think you're mute, sir.
One second. Sorry, I was on mute. I must first compliment the Indian foreign policy project for getting us all together, and thank you, Colonel Sodhi. And I also must admit that I am the minnow amongst the two intelligent Chauhans. So they've said what they had to say. Coming to this question of the Taiwan question, now a lot has been written and said about India's participation in this battle. Firstly, in my opinion, I doubt whether China will get into invading Taiwan with what is going on in the world at present. You've seen, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, US getting involved and on. But nonetheless, even if it did, I don't think we are in any position to interfere to help Taiwan because India believes in strategic autonomy, and we don't have any reason to get involved in this conflict between China taking over Taiwan. If at all, what we have to see is what US is going to do, whether it will come to Taiwan assistance or not, but it would not, I don't think India is in a position or it would be wise on our part to get involved in this conflict at all. I mean, that's a short and cryptic answer that I have for this question of yours.
Thank you, sir. Really, I agree with you. It will be a very tough situation for us in case China does attack Taiwan. Vice Admiral Chauhan, sir, you have something to say, please?
Yeah, I thought this would be a good debate session rather than being sterile and asking one question to each of us. So I wanted to pitch into some of the things about Taiwan. See, I agree with Anil that we probably will not see a military conflict between Taiwan, between China and USA over Taiwan, the fact that some 4-star or 3-star general says something or the other about 2027 isn't very much to go on, because, and the reason I say this is because, look, China and USA vis-a-vis Taiwan are in a binary. If they fight, either USA will win or China will win, right? If China wins, then they are able to forcibly incorporate Taiwan into mainland China. And if that happens, that's the end of the US order, not in the East China Sea where Taiwan is located, not in the Pacific, throughout the world, in the Atlantic, in the Indian Ocean, in the Arctic, in the Antarctic. That's the end of the US. If the USA wins and China loses, then that's pretty much the end of the Chinese Communist Party. And in so doing, you will have toppled the strategic center of gravity of China. So when the stakes are so high, then players tend not to play. For example, if we were to have a chat and say that, okay, we're getting bored in this conversation, let's toss a coin, and if it comes heads, I win, if it comes tails, you lose. And so we do that a couple of times, and it's really boring. Then we say, let's attach a bet to it, and agar the heads aaya and I win, then you buy me coffee, and vice versa. Then we say, okay, then I raise the stake again, and I say, but what is the probability throughout so far? 0.5, right? We discard the probability of the coin landing on the edge. Now if I say, if it comes heads, then you can shoot me and my family. And if it comes tails, then I will shoot you and your family dead. Now you're going to say, this Admiral is completely nuts. And you will not play the game. Because though the probability remains 0.5, the risk factor, that is the acceptability of resultant loss, has increased dramatically. Now comes the issue about what should India do. So for India, the best option is that they don't fight. But if they fight, then what? Then I do not agree with Anil that we are disinterested and a disinterested party, because then the next domino to fall is India, because China will have no compunction about arraying its entire orbit against India. So we are an interested party. Best option for us, they don't fight. If they fight, the USA must win. And therefore, what is it that we can then do? Conceptualizing our doing as moving kinetic forces into the Pacific Ocean in general and the East China Sea in particular is stupid. So what we will do is we will address China on a number of existential levels simultaneously, while concentrating our abilities in our principal area of advantage, namely the western segment of the Indo-Pacific, that is the Indian Ocean, thereby allowing a freer movement of the American orbit against China. So I thought I'd throw that particular cat amongst some pigeons and see whether that creates any chaos or not. Thank you.
So it is really amazing the way you explained, and I agree with you, sir, to a very complex and complicated situation, both for the US as well for China. Thank you so much, sir. Shokin, to answer, you are raising your hand, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with Bilu, sir. The issue is, what do we want to fight with? And who do we want to fight with? Or do we want to fight at all? Or can we share the Asian continent? Can that become less opaque? Can it become just a glass of water? Is there room for us to have an equitable relationship with China? I think for India, these are the questions we have to ask ourselves on a daily basis. When will China stop arming Pakistan? When will they stop interfering in our systems? When will we be able to share what we want? And when will we reach what we feel is our space in the world? I agree. China and America simply cannot fight. Taiwan's a non-issue. It's a small island. It makes no sense. It may have a lot of economic heft, or it has the chips. But other than that, there's nothing really that China can do or has done or will want to do, because what is the future? Even if they get Taiwan, so what? Okay. So the end of the point is, for India, what are we looking at? If we can somehow drive a wedge between China and Pakistan, That's the first issue. Is there room for us to say, don't go to Pakistan, come to us. We're a bigger market for you. We're a bigger country. We've got more space and we can give you more than what Pakistan can give you. Now, if our leadership had the sagacity and the wisdom to actually go to China and say, forget all the past. That's past. The Dalai Lama is 84 years old. He doesn't have much time. We will not deal with this again. Don't worry, Tibet is yours. And let's look at the rest of the way we're going to deal with you. Because we've got to look at the next 100 years. And where are those 100 years going to go? We can't continue this situation with Pakistan. We can't keep reacting to every foolish terrorist attack. Because as and when we react, and we've seen starting from Balakot or the Uri incident, that our every reaction to Pakistan has become a little more kinetic. And at one point, and I'd like to just throw this into this, is that we might get ambushed because our reactions are becoming more and more predictable. We are taking more and more kinetic actions. And definitely, just as China and Pakistan got together from day one, it's going to be a difficult process to deal with the next terrorist attack. Because we've also seen that in this world, other than Afghanistan and Israel, who said anything about India? Not Russia, definitely not the US. And the end of the view, we actually came back to square one, that India and Pakistan are just, it's a skirmish. We're always fighting. It's about Kashmir. So somewhere I feel that in our relationship with Pakistan, with China, we must have the wisdom to deal with China on an equitable basis and tell them that we are a better friend for you than Pakistan will ever be. And that's the challenge for our diplomacy. That's the challenge for our leadership. Because if we continue to have this relationship with China, which is adversarial, we are never going to be able to develop our economy. And though we talk about 2047 being Viksit Bharat, it's going to be very difficult if so much of our effort is going to be placed in now upgrading ourselves to fight the next war. So over to you, Jacinda.
True, sir. I totally agree with you. And I think our defense minister is visiting China on 25th June, which is his first visit as the defense minister. I think there'll be a lot of changes after this visit. Thank you so much, sir. So my next question is to Air Vice Marshal Golani, sir. Sir, in the the ongoing Operation Sindoor, the first phase of which we saw from 7th May to 10th May, definitely the Air Force played a very, pivotal role. And the whole country was really, really in awe and admiration the way the entire Operation Sindoor phase 1 was conducted. Sir, given your immense experience both while in service and now in air warfare, how do you assess or what do you feel, what changes have gone in the air warfare, before Operation Sindoor and these 88 hours of Operation Sindoor?
Coming to your question of this recent, I wouldn't call it a conflict, a skirmish that we had with Pakistan. I think there were many firsts in this Operation Sindoor and the Bunyan al-Marsus, which happened between India and Pakistan. It was, I think, for the first time ever that fighter aircraft from both the countries did not cross each other's borders, and the warfare took place at a distance where India used long-range vectors very effectively, air-launched weapons against Pakistan. So it proved that the efficacy of long-range weapons, which is here to stay, and we need to, continue to improve upon them. The second aspect that got proved was the air defense part, where the India's integrated air command and control system, which was indigenously developed, stood the test of time and was effectively able to neutralize whatever was thrown at us from Pakistan. And the third point that emerged was the role of kamikaze drones, which we haven't seen in as large numbers as we've seen in the Russia-Ukraine conflict or the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. So this is something which will, in the future continue to develop and grow. But the major difference, like I said, from 2019 or 2016 earlier missions and what happened now was the ability of beyond visual range combat, the efficacy of the S-400, which actually neutralized a platform at more than 300 kilometers aerial platform, and the efficacy of air defense. So, in my opinion, both are essential. Having an air defense, which does not allow the enemies from drones counter unmanned US systems to the conventional air defense, as also the offensive air power, because unless you have the offensive air power, you will not be able to get the desired results that you want. And I think the primacy of air power in a short or intense conflict has been proven this time around, that this is the tool that the political establishment has available with you to give you results, quickly, precisely, and in the time frame that you want with precision. Coming to this part of the Taiwan, I'll just go back to that previous question. I think we also tend to ignore the role that Pakistan is going to play. If India is going to, we have to understand that it's easier said than done. Driving a wedge between Pakistan and China, in my opinion, is not possible. And Pakistan is going to play the spoiler in any conflict that happens. So if India starts to take sides in any conflict, then it will be, we have to tread with caution, is all that I would say.
Thank you, sir. Definitely. Thank you so much. The friendship between Pakistan and China is well known, especially by the op-ed that Chinese President Xi Jinping wrote when he visited Pakistan on 20th April 2015, where he said that the Pakistani-Chinese friendship is higher than the highest mountains, deeper than the deepest sea, and sweeter than honey. I totally agree with you, sir. And sir, I also totally agree with you that the primacy of air power has improved in Operation Sindoor, and this 88-hour conflict or skirmish was definitely very gripping. It had every Indian citizen just hooked on the television channels 24/7. It was a very well conducted operation, and really all the three services played a very important role. So my next question is to Vice Admiral Chauhan, sir. Sir, during Operation Sindoor, and why I'm talking about Operation Sindoor, because there was always a big talk in the media that China was the hand behind Pakistan, whatever little effort Pakistan tried to put, which finally resulted in a very clear military victory for India. And also quoted many times in the media was that the Indian Navy played a silent but a very great role, because the Western Fleet was about to bomb Karachi and all those things which came in the media. So my question to you is that, given your immense experience while in uniform and now in naval warfare, how has the naval warfare changed prior to Operation Sindoor and this brief 88-hour skirmish or conflict that happened?
Okay, so prior to, first of all, naval warfare is a warfare which is not very different from that of the Army or the Air Force, in that it needs to be prosecuted at all three levels simultaneously. You cannot take on an enemy only at the tactical level unless you're dealing with a very grossly inferior enemy, and that is not the case in the discussion that we're having. So all the three elements, the strategic element of conflict, the operational element of conflict, and the tactical element of conflict have to be addressed simultaneously. It is not an army or an air force or a navy that goes to conflict. It is a state, and the state does not have only the army, navy, and air force as its instruments. It may well have them as its primaries, but it also has several other instruments that it will bring to bear. So that differentiates the skirmish from all-out conflict. Now, when you're deploying a navy, you deploy a navy at the strategic level, just like the other two services. So I'm not singing some superior than thou tune. I'm just saying that you deploy a navy at the strategic level by giving signals of deterrence, that do not do this. If you cross this, this will happen. When navies get deployed, this is only a cliche, but it's nevertheless true. When the Indian Navy gets deployed, countries get created. The last time we deployed the Indian Navy in battle, a new country emerged. So now whether we want Whether our nation wants that to happen at this point in time or not is a separate subject. The second thing is that when you deploy the Navy in the manner that you are doing, you are limiting the conflict or the temptation of the other party to expand the conflict. The third is that if the government so desires that conflict should in fact be progressed along all the three fronts, air, land, and sea, then I think that the Indian Navy's deployment pattern was pretty impressive. Having said which, there's one last point I want to leave the conversation with, and that is the concept of maneuver. As a concept, all of us understand and internalize and acknowledge the relevance of maneuver. So maneuver means that if you are getting stuck in one area, then you should be able to employ your forces in another area of your which will be to your advantage. If maneuver is limited in your mind to a core sector, then it is limited in your mind and it will be limited in practice. Whether maneuver should therefore take place in the India-Pakistan conflict with the Chinese being the actual puppeteer and the Pakistanis being merely the puppet. In fact, it is quite true to say that Pakistan has reached a stage where it is now probably the 35th province of China. But if you allow that, if you take that into account, then I think that the messaging that has been registered on all sides is not only the remarkable and entirely commendable feat of the Indian Air Force as well as the Army Air Defense, and it is a bad idea to downplay the role of the Army in this thing. It was in Ops Sindoor. It was remarkable. But there's one thing that you must remember. We have a contested set of borders, and therefore we are never going to be a postmodern country. We need the Indian Army and we need the Indian Navy, Air Force to be able to provide us with India. The geopolitical, and the cartographic identity of India is provided. That means the Army and the Air Force provide India. Then the Indian Navy takes India forward, because in the next 200 years are going to be centuries of the sea. And in the course of these 200 years, India will either be a maritime and a space power, or India will not be any kind of power at all. This is the message that the post-Ops Sindoor paradigm has generated for the world. It is to say that don't mess with us. If you eliminate the M and don't allow me to say the F, then don't mess with us is a really good expression. And that is what the advantage of the post and pre deployment is concerned, because in the post deployment, you have a leadership of the country that is saying, if you mess with me, I will deploy not merely verbiage, but I will deploy ordnance. So we have a really, really good foreign cooperation mechanism with Pakistan. We will deliver ordnance and they will accept. Thank you.
So very interesting point made, and I totally agree with you. It was a real great jointmanship by both, by all the three: Indian Army, Indian Navy, Indian Air Force. Really, hats off and salute to each of the three services for the great, work they did in Operation Sindoor. Sir, time is at a premium. I would have loved to discuss and learn so much from each one of you. So, like I said in the beginning, you three are my role models, and I follow your writings, your television appearances, every particular thing that you come in the public domain with. But sir, time is a constraint, like I said. So, sir, my last question is to General Shokin to answer. Sir, how do you visualize the India-China relationship in the next about 2 decades?
Jacinda, that's a very interesting and difficult question to answer. The visualization, the one I would like to visualize, should be a relationship which is non-adversarial, which is a growth that is good for both of us. It's what we actually thought when we became independent, that Asia has enough space for both China and India. But as the world has gone through these 75 years, we have realized that we've fallen into the adversarial part. So let's just look at the issues that cause this adversarial relationship. The first issue is a boundary, the line of actual control or the boundary between India, the international boundary between India and China. It is a contested boundary. It hasn't been sorted out. So adversarial will continue till we sort out this part of the boundary. Do we have the wisdom for a give and take here? Is there place for a give and take? These are issues we have to ask ourselves. The second is our relationship with Pakistan. And the more Pakistan becomes the 35th province of China, the greater will be the problem for us. Because once again, we have an adversarial relationship. The third is the attitude of the government, not of India, but of China, saying that there is only place for one person. And as China continues to have superpower status, she feels that in this arena of Asia, there's only one country that can contest her, and that is India. So, as you said, probably China believes that on the mountain there can be only one lion. That one lion will be China for the Chinese. Why not China and India? Because we can't live together. So, whether from 75 to 100 years, we will have to continue to prepare in strength to deal with China. You spoke of the India, Russia, China, relationship. There has to be a time at which somewhere along the line we three realize that maybe there is place for all of us in this place and we can grow together. This is what I visualize for the next 75 years. But more important than that is it our century? If it is our century, then we need to get our neighbors with us. We need to grow economically. We need to have a process by which we can challenge China, not just militarily, because that seems a very difficult process today, but we can challenge them economically. So, and like I said, the Dalai Lama will, age is catching up with him. Will it be an issue 10 years from now? Will there be another kind of Tibetan government in India? Because these are issues that cause problems for us. So before we talk of whatever is the future, we must look at the points of problems. So these are the issues that I feel, Jacinda, we're looking at a continuous adversarial relationship for the next 25 years, unless we have the wisdom to change this.
Absolutely, sir. There's a lot of, adversity from the Chinese side, especially towards India. We have tried our best, but then we know what has happened in the last so many decades. And I totally also agree with you, sir, when you said that there's a lot of place for everyone in this world, provided everyone wants to, prosper, have peace, give good life to citizens. I hope our neighbors understand this, at some time. We come here to the end of the discussion. Well, here we come to the end of this very educative and enlightening webinar. I have learned a lot from all the three, legendary panelists whom I have adored for a long time and really feel part and, honored and privileged to be part of this webinar. Thank you, sirs. Thank you so much. Now I hand over the mic to the Indian Foreign Policy Project.
Thank you so much, sir. This was really great. We had such a wonderful time. I just request Medha Gupta to come over and deliver the quick vote of thanks in the end. Medha, are you there?
I hope I'm visible and audible.
Yeah, great.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the organizing team, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished guests, Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, PVSM, AVSM, YSM, SM, VSM, Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan, AVSM and BA, VSM, Vice Air Marshal Anil Golani, and Lieutenant Colonel J.S. Sodhi for their delighted presence with us and sharing insightful and enlightening thoughts during today's event. Their expertise and passion, while also having served in the Indian Army, Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force, has truly resonated with the audience and enriched our understanding on the complex dynamics of India-China relations through the military's lens. I am sure many of us are left with new perspectives and plenty of ideas to take back and broaden our study. This event would not have been possible without the profound contribution of division heads, members, and the founding committee of the Indian Foreign Policy Project. A special thanks to B.R. Neeraj, Ajitesh Vishwanath, Anirudh. Lastly, we would like to thank the audience for their active participation and thoughtful engagement throughout the session. As we go towards the conclusion of the event, we hope to carry forward the spirit of dialogue and cooperation that lies at the heart of diplomacy. Let's continue to think critically about India's way in the world and grow our shared passion for international relations and diplomacy through more such sessions in the future. Thank you all.